This is the Whole Care Network, helping you tell your story one podcast at a time. Content presented in the following podcast is for information purposes only. Views and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of the host and guest and may not represent the views and opinions of the Whole Care Network. Always consult with your physician for any medical advice, and always consult with your attorney for any legal advice. And thank you for listening to the Whole Care Network.
Hello, my friend. Welcome to A Time to Care the Caregivers podcast. I'm Isabel Melgarejo, your host. And today with me, I have Miriam Bahar, who is a senior and specialty move manager. In other words, she helps seniors downsize, figure out what they want to bring into their new lives, and move. Welcome, Miriam.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me, Isabel.
And this is so awesome. Tell us a little bit more about what you do.
So basically, I help seniors and people with, disabilities or some kind of issue where, moving, especially at any age, but especially when you're up there in age or you're going through some sort of health situation, it's overwhelming. So I help seniors and their families go through the tough task that it is to right size, what we call right sizing, going through all the stuff that we've accumulated throughout the years, going through the memories, going through all those closets that seem to, grow overnight. And we find homes to all these amazing items that we don't need anymore. So I go through it with them, make the families part of it if they wish. I help pack. I'm a packer. I professionally pack everything. If it's a local move, I help with the unpacking and settling into the new home. So it goes with, making a floor plan, making sure that the next home is also catered to them and their new lifestyle. It's important that the new chapter in the person's life is also a good one, right? So we learn about their routine. What do they do? Not what they did. We all had amazing stories. We used to play tennis. We used to play golf. We used to bake a lot. We used to, do a lot of things. And that's all important stuff that we can honor and we can remember. We can definitely represent in our new chapter, but we definitely don't need to keep all that stuff in the new chapter, right? We don't need the golf clubs if we're not going to use them. So we definitely go through those motions and those conversations, and we create that new chapter where we utilize the space in the best way possible.
I find sometimes it is hard for people to let go of things. I think we started getting that way because our parents get a hold. It's hard for them to let go of our toys. So they teach us to treasure things, and that's consistent throughout life. I was a fencer and I stopped fencing 20 years ago. And it took me probably a good 10 years to get rid of all the equipment, all that I had. And the last time I checked it, it was moldy. It smelled like horrible. And probably it was never used by anybody else because I didn't dare to share it when it was in good condition.
Exactly. And your story is, very common. So what we try to do is find homes to these items, try to find homes with charities, people that use it, even individuals that have kids in the sports or in the arts that can really treasure these items, bring them back to life before we put them in, the junk pile. We try to save them. What you're telling, me is very, very common, especially when we're dealing with a senior that item is the last thing that they're spouse, shared with them, and the spouse is gone, so that memory is very painful because they're holding on to the memories and also the items that remind them of their loved one, or the memories that bring them back to when their kids were young and their kids are, in another state or another country. So it's really tough. And there's a lot of hand holding in what senior move management is. And it takes the right individual to really sit with the client and understand and empathize with what they're going through. Of course, we also get educated on different, topics such as memory impairment and other issues that also affect the senior population more. So I am a member of the National Association for Senior and Specialty Move Managers, and we get training and courses and, continuing education. We go to seminars yearly, and we definitely are a community that believe in education and participation, because education is power, and it's important to stay current with what goes on and what affects our seniors. So it's important to really put ourselves in their shoes and, be aware of what's going on in their minds and their hearts, and take the time that it's really a lot that's going on in their brains. It's not just putting, objects in boxes, wrapping it nicely so it doesn't break, or just giving them away to, the next charity that takes them. It's really focusing on what's important to them, and listening to their stories, and understanding that it's not as easy. So what you're saying is very real. It's very real, and
So
it's a beautiful journey that we go together on.
I know there's different methods. I know there's Mary Kondo and her books and a lot of professional organizers that go through things with the Spark Joy methodology, which is hard to understand unless you're very sensitive, unless you're very connected with yourself. And I know that because I was a professional organizer at some point in my life. It is very different, I think, when you're going through things in different ages and in the different chapters of your life. What do you feel is the hardest for seniors when trying to right size? What is what you're prioritizing? Because you were talking about the golf clubs, and probably that means a lot to them.
It depends, it's a case by case. There's people that, treasure that loved one they don't have anymore. There's people that hold on to something because in their time it was a lot of money they had to save in order to purchase that item, and they're holding on to that, that memory, or the fear of not being able to afford something that valuable anymore. There's a lot of factors that are involved in holding on to material things, but we try to remind them, the memories are not in the actual items, they're in you, right? It's a very hard concept to sometimes relay. We are faced with challenges, and the families, are our partners here. It's important to include them in the process. It's a tricky one because we all know that, family dynamics are different in every family. We all have them,
Mhm.
right? But a team dynamic is very important. Those daughters, those sons, those nieces, those nephews, even loved ones that could be family friends that are just very close to that person. They are key because they are the true experts in that client. So gathering information from them is key when we can't, get our point across. So again, it's a case by case. If we're having an issue with that item that the client can't get rid of, I hate to say it, but can't part with, there has to be a way where we can kind of work together and let them know in the best way possible that it can't go with them. So if we can, get the point across, we have to find a different way. We have to not keep trying. There's no arguing is not going to take us, to the goal. We have to find a different way, a different route. Or maybe, pausing it in the moment, and just focusing on the next item, until we can circle back and go back to that. So it depends.
So, what is your take with storage units?
So our training, we really try to not go that route because our whole philosophy is right sizing. Our whole philosophy is not to keep hoarding, to not keep accumulating. The whole point is to find homes, to really take what you need, to stop the accumulation of things that you don't use, that you don't need. So it's really important to focus on keeping what you need, right, for your next chapter. And everything else should go to your family and loved ones to really, work with your senior move manager on the things that you want to perhaps sell. We can partner with other parties for estate sales, auctions, online or in person. We do a lot of, we use other parties for online auctions. Some people use, social media for that as well. Of course, donations, a lot of things go to great organizations that can use these items. So definitely storage units are not what we aim for because it's again going back to what we don't want. They get forgotten again, and it's definitely goes against what we want to embrace, which is the right sizing.
I don't even understand the concept of having a storage unit. It doesn't serve any purpose. And I get sometimes if you're moving between states, you might need to use one while you get your home. I don't like if you're moving into a new home and you're building a new house. Maybe you have the need for a few months
Right.
to store certain things. But I agree with you. You shouldn't be using a storage unit for forever.
Not for our clients, definitely.
Because a lot of people just have a storage units and then they forget about them.
Absolutely.
So what do you do in these cases? Is that something that you talk about with your clients? Like, hey, are there any storage units out there
Oh
that we
yes.
should know about?
That's part of what I help them clear out their storage units. When I clear out their homes, it's part of, what we go with. We start with the home, especially, we focus on the items they need to take to their new home, the items they're using currently. We start with, their current items, right? Their clothing, their shoes. We focus on what they're using today, their comfy sneakers, their everyday clothing. We know they're not going to the Met Gala, right? And they're not going to be using those beautiful high heels that they used to wear when they were, in their 30s. So we focus on their current stuff, and then we go through the sorting and downsizing process, and getting rid of the stuff. So once we get them pretty much where they need to be, we focus on storage units, and a lot of them have those attics, those basements. Well, not in Florida, but in other states there's tons of areas like basements that people can focus on, and you would be surprised on the amount of storage that they have, as well as offsite storage units like you mentioned, where people just accumulate stuff. And yeah, you can clear out, you can sell, you can do lots of things to get those items out. And that is part of what a senior move manager does. Absolutely.
Once you have declutter, what do you recommend people to know during these process? What is good to know?
Good to know is safety. You want to make sure that even if your loved one is doing well, even if they're, older but mobile, they're doing well, healthy, think about the next, 10 years. They might need a walker. They might, have hip replacement at some point or knee replacement. So think about those walkways. Think about making sure that there are clear paths everywhere in their home. So make sure that there's enough space for a walker, for sure. The width everywhere, in the closets, in the, everywhere you go, make sure that there's enough space for a walker / wheelchair width. And also try to get rid of those area rugs. Wherever I see them, I cringe because it's definitely a trip hazard, even for young people. I mean, I've tripped on area rugs that are, curled up or whatever. Bad things start with falls, especially when the vision starts, failing. And as we age, all of us, the vision is definitely impacted. Everybody knows this. So why risk it, right? So I think it's important to do the most preventive kind of medicine we can, right? And stay healthy with the right exercise and, diet and, try to avoid stress and all the good stuff that's out there. But also the environment is really important, and a clutter-free environment is part of that. Make sure that, if you don't use it in the past, 7 months, clothing, in your closet you're not using, donate it. There's tons of people that need it. Blankets, pillows that you don't use, towels, even if they're old and have, stains, the animal shelters, they use them. They would love you for it. So make sure you just grab a bag, stuff it. On your next trip to the supermarket, just dump it in one of those, donation buckets if you don't want to schedule a donation pickup. Get rid of it. It's so important. It's for your mental health. You'll feel better. And it's really a preventive medicine, I really call it. So a clutter-free environment is so good for anyone, but especially if you have somebody, that's getting up there in age, a family member. Think about them and just think ahead. Don't think about when they're going to be moving. Think about it now.
I think right now that is spring and everybody's doing a spring cleaning.
Yes,
I think it's the perfect time to do that. So any tips and advice aside everything you have already shared?
absolutely. Look, I am a fan of the buy one, get one free in the supermarket, but if you're not going to use it in the next, couple of weeks, don't get it. Honestly, spring cleaning, yeah, do it once a month. Don't wait for spring. Um, spring is great, but don't wait for it, right? So definitely, I would say less is more. It's just a better way to live for anyone, for everyone. Easier.
Anything else you want to share with everybody out there?
It's wonderful that you have this platform for people. I think all of us, we are caregivers in a way, and we're all taking care of someone, whether it's a family member, a loved one, a client. We love people. I thank you for the opportunity to share my message, our message. So thank you for this time. And, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. My company name is A Moving Experience LLC. I am based in South Florida, but I love to travel. So, if any of you guys want to reach out, I'm very much available. And thank you again, Isabel. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much. We will be sharing your information in the show notes so everybody can reach out if they have any questions, if they would like additional advice, support, or anything else. I'm pretty sure they'll reach out to you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
This is the Whole Care Network. Helping you tell your story one podcast at a time.